Hey everyone, I'm Kevin Bartlett.
And I'm Christine Strauss, and this is The Real Deal with Baird and Warner, where we cover all things real estate.
For buyers, sellers, renters, investors, and fellow agents. So before we get into our topic for today, let's take a quick look at the activity in the market over the weekend. On the list side, again, listings dropped. We've kind of been seeing that pretty regularly. We're still only at about 2/3 of the amount of inventory we had on the market last year at this time, so pretty low on that front.
Absolutely. And on the buy side, we've been doing great as the buyers out there. The activity had been up, but this weekend we were actually down. And the level was almost identical to where we were at this time last year. So that buyer activity, it's starting to sink a little bit.
Absolutely, unfortunately, but it is this time of the year, so
that's true.
Pretty typical. So.
Good point.
As everyone can see, it's just Christine and I today holding down the fort. So they've got to bring it back to basics every now and again.
Right.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit about etiquette in the real estate industry, both for agents, so you know what you should be doing, but for regular buyers and sellers as well. So we're going to be looking at etiquette for showings and then for sellers when you're listing your home.
Yeah.
So to start, for etiquette on showings, and again, this is for agents and for buyers in general, the very first thing, in my opinion, is show up on time.
Yes.
This is actually not just a preference. This is a legal matter. If you show up before or after your scheduled showing time, could be up to a $2,500 fine. So definitely not something you want to mess around with. Plus, just remember, you're going to someone's home. You don't want, especially if they have kids, you don't want them having to leave the house early if you end up showing up late,
right.
Or vice versa. You don't want to show up to the house when they're still in the house.
Absolutely, yeah. So key there. Make sure you're showing up on time. If your appointment is from 3 to 3:30, let's make sure that you're getting there between that 3 and 3:30. You're safe. Technically, anything outside of that time frame, we're kind of calling that our red zone. That's the fine zone, so you could be liable for that $2,500 fine.
Yep.
So
and if you're off, if you're running late, if you're an agent, you're running late, just notify the listing agent. See if they're okay if you get there early, as long as you're covering your bases as an agent.
Absolutely. Very good point. So let's switch over so we talked about being on time. That's crucial. Now let's talk about making sure we're following those showing instructions. So
Absolutely.
If they have any kind of guidelines, some simple things like taking off your shoes or where the booties, do they want lights on or off, making sure we're locking all of those doors. Again, some of those basics, we're kind of going back to the fundamentals here when we're out showing. Let's make sure that we're doing that. We want to make sure that we're protecting that home. Again, protecting yourself too as an agent. You don't want
Sure.
to be held liable, if you leave the back door open, anything like that, or if your clients or yourself are wearing the shoes inside the house without the booties. That's a big no-no. We want to make sure we're following those rules that the sellers have set forth.
Yep, especially right now with COVID, so we can toss masks into that equation. You can expect to have to wear a mask in every home that you're going in right now. That's just an expectation. You should just know that ahead of time. Even if the listing agent doesn't put it down on showing instructions, it's something you might want to do anyway. Just remember, you have to keep the sellers in mind. You're going into someone else's home and potentially bringing a disease into their homes.
Absolutely. And even to that point too, I know it's super exciting for a potential buyer to walk in and really start to feel and kind of live in the home as if it's their own, opening cabinets, doors, things like that. Something that I've just been doing as my personal practice is I will wear my gloves and my mask, of course, going into any home, but let them know ahead of time. Let those buyers know that I would be happy to open doors, open cabinets, anything like that for them. So again, we're doing our part to make sure we're keeping everyone safe out in the real estate world.
Absolutely. Another easy one here is, this is more so for agents, but you would like to get this from your clients, is leaving feedback. So if you're a seller, there's nothing worse than someone coming into your home for a showing and then you don't hear anything back from them ever. So you have no idea how the showing went.
Right.
You're not even 100% sure that they even came in the house.
Exactly.
So it's important to leave feedback. You don't have to write a novel. But you just want to, let the seller more than the agent know this is what my client thought about the house.
Exactly, right? We don't want to be leaving those sellers with a big question mark. And, it's a nice courtesy to the agents too. So that way they can continue to do their job to help coach their clients. Is it something, are we looking at price? Is it condition? What are those features? We don't want to leave those sellers with question marks. So again, do your part, be a good agent and give that feedback.
All right. this is yours, so I'm letting you take this one.
So this is something I feel it's a topic we maybe don't talk enough about. Maybe we could say it's a little taboo even, but let's talk about bathroom usage. I personally, this is my biggest thing. I like to just try to notify my clients. If I am out showing my buyers, I like to set the expectation up front. I personally don't feel it's appropriate for my buyers to be using the restroom in someone else's home without any kind of permission. So I let my buyers know ahead of time before we even go out to start looking at these properties that, hey, if that comes up, totally understandable, not a problem at all. But let's find a spot that we can go stop off at to make sure that everyone is staying safe and comfortable. Again, just my practice. Everyone has their own ideas on it.
No, I'm with you on that, especially right now with the COVID situation. That's just another surface that you don't necessarily want your clients to be touching. And as a seller, you don't want people sitting on your toilet.
That's a fair point. And not only that, too, but just as an agent, certainly not something that I want to be held liable for. You know, if something overflows, who's that going to come back on? Most likely you as the agent. So that's just an area I'd like to stay away from.
It's almost like talking to your kids. You have to say, go, if you have to go, let's go before we start.
Absolutely.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. We were looking at etiquette for showings. Let's look at etiquette for selling your home and for listings. So first and foremost, I think this should come without saying, but you really need to have your home accessible. I know as an agent, I've come across listings that either said they had a lockbox that didn't, or had a lockbox that wasn't working, and I wasn't able to get my client into the home.
Right.
So you would think that's self-explanatory there, but sometimes that's not the case. So first and foremost, just make sure as a seller, your listing agent is giving accessibility for a buyer to get into your home, to actually see it so that you can sell it.
Exactly. And then, of course, piggybacking off of that, let's make sure the home is show ready. So I'm sure the house was in great condition, tip-top shape there to have photos, any kind of marketing pieces done. So as agents, let's make sure that our sellers understand that it needs to look that way when you are having the showings come through. We certainly don't want things left out or kind of, in a wreck there. So that way the buyers are seeing the home as they saw it online too. So really nice to have those things
nobody
in place.
wants to see dirty underwear hanging around when you go into a home.
That's very true. Not the best, maybe not necessarily show ready.
Yes. Going along with that is alerting buyers and buyers agents of any pets in the home. You don't want to walk into a home with a client and have no idea what you're walking into, and there could be a dog or a cat on the loose. I know that I've walked into some homes that have had cats that have tried to get out the door, and I didn't even know that there were cats in the home because I wasn't told that. So that's something as a listing agent you should be alerting buyers agents of, whether on your showing instructions or you can reach out to them directly, but you need to let them know what they're walking into on the pet front. There's a lot of stories about interesting pet discoveries in homes.
Absolutely. And so while we're on this whole topic of letting people know and kind of disclosure, if you will, the biggest thing that I feel that we need to talk about is audio and video recording. So I know it is very common these days for sellers to have things like, whether it's even Alexa or the Ring doorbell or any kind of audio or recording device in the home. Totally normal, but we just need to make sure we're disclosing it. So audio recording is actually illegal. It can be considered a felony. So on the agent side, we want to make sure that if we even have an idea that we think something like that might be in the home, let's just make sure we're disclosing it and letting our sellers know too, kind of what those ramifications are if they don't. Same thing with video recording. Even though that's not illegal, I think it's just really best to disclose. Make sure you cover all your bases so that way there's no gray area.
Exactly. That way you don't have to worry about anything coming back to bite you in the future.
Exactly. Awesome.
All right. Well, I think we covered a good amount. There's always more etiquette that we can topics that we can go in, but I think this is good for today.
Absolutely.
Let's take a quick second here to hear from one of our key mortgage loan officers for this week's Mortgage Minute.
Good afternoon. This is Christy Kavoris with Key Mortgage, and welcome to today's Mortgage Minute. Today is Tuesday, October 6, 2020. A lot of people that come to me that are wishing to buy homes ask how much they need for a down payment. Could be as little as 3%, 5%, 10 or 20% down, or anywhere in between. But you don't have to have 20% down to buy a house. You simply have to have PMI for a certain period of time. So what is PMI? That's private mortgage insurance. So when you have less than 20% down, the bank looks at you as a slightly higher risk because you have a little bit less invested in that house. So they charge you a monthly amount until you reach 20% equity in your house. So say for example, you put down 10%, you might have PMI for 3 to 5 years depending on your loan amount and the PMI amount. And the PMI can vary from maybe $50 a month to $150 a month, or maybe even more depending how big your loan is. Some factors that determine that monthly cost of PMI are whether there's one borrower or two, whether your credit score is 680, 700, 720, 760, anywhere in between, because there's different buckets that affect the price point of that PMI. But paying maybe $50 or $100 a month, like let's say $1,000 a year for PMI for possibly 5 years, you might pay $5,000 in PMI, but that's a lot better than coming up with 20% down instead of 10% down. So it's a good way to get into a home and take advantage of the low interest rates. And speaking of interest rates, don't let that be your primary focus, because that might only affect your payment by $10 or $20 a month, whether that interest rate is 0.125 higher or lower. The PMI is a far bigger factor in your monthly payment and how much house you can afford. For more information, please give me a call, a text, or an email. My information is listed below. Once again, Christy Kavoris with Key Mortgage.
Thanks again for joining us. I'm Christine Strauss.
And I'm Kevin Bartlett. Catch us next time to hear about The Real Deal.